Hello, everyone. I am giving you some strategies for your authentic life beyond messy relationships. My name is Judy Herman. I'm a psychotherapist, and I am the author of Beyond Messy Relationships. And I'm going to give you some tips and tools today to help you to bust through the shame or bust through a shameful divorce. And this is what every executive woman needs to know. And if you're not an executive woman, you need to know it anyway. First of all, there's so many common things I hear having done therapy, doing marriage counseling, couples counseling for so many years. There's so many themes that show up that are very similar. And that's why I want to give you some of these tips. Of course, none of this is a substitute for professional counseling, but I hope that you get some wisdom as you go along, as you listen. But this is psychoeducational only, of course. And it does hit me in a very personal way, because when I wrote my book, Beyond Messy Relationships, it is my intense and dramatic personal story. And most therapists who write books will write about the intense and dramatic stories of their clients and not themselves. And I didn't know of very many other therapists that were doing this. But I give you psychological wisdom and spiritual insight, of course, at the beginning of each of the chapters. But here's the thing. After I wrote it, and I thought, oh my gosh, if my clients read this and they're going to say, and why are we seeing her as our therapist? So, I think we all deal with this just because we are human. We deal with shame. Shame is identifying yourself with a certain incident, such as divorce. And it can really hold you back. But I'm going to help you bust through shame and bust through even in reference to divorce, and it could apply to many other things. Number one, revise the words. Revise the words. Hang with me. I'm going to give you some examples. Years ago, I worked in a pregnancy center, and we were dealing with, I was counseling with young moms with pregnancies that they didn't expect. And we talked about adoption. And we also talked about abortion, of course, abortion-minded and so on and so forth. But there was so much shame even in adoption, like a person who's been adopted, and they use the term or the phrase, I was put up for adoption. When you use those terms, I was put up for adoption, or you're going to put your child up for adoption, those terms are very negative and they can take you into a shame base. But if you instead you use things, I am making an adoption plan for my baby because I love my child and I'm not able at this stage or whatever to raise the child. Making a plan for adoption, do you see how that changes the whole thing? Because you're doing that because you love your baby rather than give up. So that's just an example. And then also a pet peeve of mine, I wrote about it because my second husband had a severe mental illness. And it was a pet peeve when people said, oh, he's bipolar or she's bipolar. No, they are human beings who have a diagnosis of bipolar. That bipolar does not identify them. So here's the term divorce. Divorce is an ugly word, isn't it? Because we associate that with litigation. We associate that with a lot of fighting and all of that stuff, and the breaking and the ending of a marriage. So here's the thing. We can change the term. First of all, can we think of divorce? Because there's so many people that come into my counseling and even couples, and years of toxic, like breathing toxic air between them, resentment, that they're not really living together. They're dying together. And you can tell it, the depression, the anxiety, the resentment building over and over actually characterizes them after a time, and it shortens their life. That stress is an overload on one's humanity. So many marriages, I would say, and maybe you can identify, is long past its expiration date. Now, don't get me wrong. I am pro-marriage, but I'm not pro-toxic marriage in which it degrades the humanity of either both or one individual. Okay, so when we take the term divorce, this is it. Can we think of a natural completion to that marriage? And when we think of divorce, can we think of, no, this was not a failure. This was a natural completion. And it was a successful marriage on so many levels. Because successful marriage doesn't mean 60 years of marriage and then, or 75 or so many years of marriage. The length of it doesn't matter. But the living together for as long as you did, it's a successful marriage. You learned and grew through it. Perhaps you've created babies through it. Perhaps you have grandchildren today because of it. Let's not wrap up the entire marriage as a failure. Let's instead think of it as a natural conclusion. Now, I know some of you may not like that. You may want to stick with the D word, divorce. I understand. I get it. And if you get mad at me, hearing my explanation here, I understand. The reality is that you have a life that is so much bigger than that divorce. And your life is even so much bigger than your roles in life and what you've learned and grown through and traumas that you've gone through and losses that you've gone through. Okay, I don't want to go on too long with this video. So first of all, revise the words. Number 2, realize your bigger self. And that I kind of touched on that. You're so much bigger. Your authentic self is so much bigger than what you realize. And this probably will be another video, but another thing I see in counseling with couples, I'll tell you up front, I'll tell you if you're wasting your money coming to couples counseling, right? I'll tell you if, okay, we've got this addiction over here, and we got to get that taken care of before we even try to have a relationship with each other. Because here's what happens is a lot of couples are relating to their false selves. You instead have a relationship with an addiction, or you instead have, this codependent, you probably have heard that word, codependency, where you have a relationship. You don't have a relationship with that other person, and you're not showing up as a real, authentic person yourself. So realize that you have a bigger self. Number 1, revise the words. Number 2, realize you have a bigger self. You are bigger than what you're going through. And 3, revitalize your life. That is living into the vitality and the movement of your life, moving beyond those negative terms that has kept you in shame. Because if you live in shame, it's going to drive addictions. It's going to make your life very small. It's going to sprinkle from generations beyond you. It's so important to get beyond the shame, revise the words, realize your bigger life, and revitalize your life. I'm Judy Herman, author of Beyond Messy Relationships. Please go to my website, judycounselor.com, and you can take a relationship stress quiz. And you can also check out my services. I would love to connect with you. Okay. And my book is called Beyond Messy Relationships. You can get wherever books are sold. You can get an author signed copy if you have a US address. So I hope to meet you. And if this resonates with you, please like and share it, and definitely share it. Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.